We need more leads.
We need more leads. 9 out of 10 times when I'm speaking with businesses, that's the problem they come to me with. They equate more leads to more sales. So on the surface, it seems like a reasonable assumption, right? We need more sales, so we just need more leads. But when you actually peel the layer back, what conversion rate have they been converting at? And if I hear generally below 30%, I know there's a conversion challenge. I was on a mastermind call 2 weeks ago. They thought it was a lead problem, and their rationale was, well, if we have to get 100 leads to get one sale, we'll keep doing that all day long. But what's really the cost of that? Because there's going to have to be someone who's going to take those 100 calls. Over time, they become demoralized, they burn out, they hate sales, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where things just get worse faster.
Alan, can you introduce yourself, your company, and what you do, what makes you unique amongst sales consultants?
I run a company called RevPack.io. We're a sales development company that helps agencies scale their sales. The big differentiator versus us and everyone else in the market right now is we look to go in and partner with them and build up their sales org so that if we're not there, the sales don't collapse, right? So what we've seen, if you're a sales agency, you can give a quick lift to a company, but if they go, the sales are done. On the other side, if you're a sales coach, right, you can come in and you can start optimizing surface level problems, let's say around maybe the close rate. But when the sales coach leaves, the results decline. So what we do is come in and help businesses execute a sales system from top of funnel to bottom of funnel to get the right type of leads and close at the conversion rate they should be closing at to help their business grow.
Awesome. And that's what everybody wants to do, right? So that's what we're going to be talking a bit about today, some specific topics around sales and marketing. We were chatting over lunch the other day because we live near each other here in Thailand. I do marketing strategies all the time, right? Someone will come to me for a marketing strategy, but I feel like there's some aspects missing because you really need to be looking at your sales strategy. The founder is doing all the sales themselves. They come to us for a marketing strategy, but what they really need is an integrated sales and marketing strategy in one go. What are your thoughts on that?
This is how a problem generally starts is, okay, a company has X revenue goal and they're like, okay, we need to figure out a way to do it. Generally, the biggest missing piece to hit that revenue goal is effective strategy. But what I tend to see over and over again is companies will say, okay, to hit our revenue goal, we're going to build a marketing team. We just need more leads, so we're going to start doing cold email. And then 3, 6, 9 months later, that plan hasn't worked. They're way behind in their revenue goals, and they'll either say one of two things. One, sales doesn't work, or two, marketing doesn't work. The fundamental root cause problem to that issue is they haven't actually sat down and created a coordinated marketing strategy and plan that is aligned with sales. It shouldn't be the case where marketing is doing its own thing in a silo, sales is doing its own thing in a silo. Basically, it should be like every piece of an orchestra all humming together. The reality is that doesn't really happen.
We're going to talk about some of the issues that you see often. Can you define a sales strategy in a few sentences? Like, we talk about sales and, thinking about how we approach sales, but how do you, when you're getting on with a client, make sure that the baseline understanding is clear with all parties?
Yeah, so the sales strategy is the blueprint on how to sell the product and who to sell it to. That is a very surface level answer to what a sales strategy is, but it's enough for people to get their head around this. When we start working with a new company, that's the first thing we look at, the sales strategy. And within that, there's about 4 or 5 key pillars that we audit before we do any outbound activity to grow the business. And they're the real fundamental stuff that a lot of companies don't spend time on. One, their ICP, meaning who's their ideal client persona. If you don't have that nailed at the start, then your outreach efforts are going to be wasted. That's why they're not
Yeah.
working. Then what we'll do is help them map out their unique selling points, essentially help them make a sales argument for why their ideal clients should choose them,
This
right?
persona
Um,
needs these things, needs these problems solved.
yes, and then the cherry on top is the strategic approach of how we're going to deliver our messaging to this specific market.
With the marketing strategy, they're actually, in some ways, from the base level, fairly similar, right? When people think marketing, they're thinking website, YouTube videos, messaging, etc. And that was what we were griping about the other day over lunch. You're looking at the messaging, you're looking at the funnels, you're looking at the same stuff that the marketing team is also looking at. Marketers and sales consultants do need to be integrated, but they're often focused on slightly different things. So a marketing strategy, typically, I try to get my clients no posting on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn every day. That in and of itself is not a marketing strategy. Just doing a checkbox is not a marketing strategy. You really need to look at your constraints, what's working now, what is actually bringing in clients currently, your ideal persona, all these things, and then build, how are we going to reach them and how are we going to sell it as well. And then after you have looked at that audit, built that very key fundamental short strategy, then you can figure out what channels then make sense to support this strategy. Then what tactics then make sense in those channels to support this strategy. So that's kind of how I define a marketing strategy as well.
Yeah, maybe it's because I've been in sales for more than 10 years. It seems more simplified in my head, but from a marketing perspective, it sounds like there's a lot more variables for things to go wrong.
In many ways, the marketing strategy is executing the sales strategy, not the other way around, right? Because you do marketing for sales. You don't do sales for marketing. So in many ways, the sales strategy is a foundational part that marketers have to consider. A sales consultant doesn't necessarily need to look at which TikTok caption style pops the most. A marketer is typically digging into hooks for videos or script writing and many things like that. There are all these tiny variables that marketers enjoy going down and learning about, which can then take our attention away from that core strategy. What is this all about? What are we trying to do? Which ends up in awkward conversations with the client eventually.
Yeah.
This leads me to the question of, why is separating these two a recipe for missed opportunities? In my opinion, we just described so much overlap between a sales strategy and a marketing strategy, and yet you're approached by people who want a sales strategy. I'm approached by people who want a marketing strategy. Why is it that a business owner isn't saying, I need a combined, integrated sales and marketing strategy in one go?
I think the challenge there is I don't think they have that context to have that perspective. Generally, it seems to be the case that if they work with someone like me or someone like you, it generally is because one or two reasons. One, revenue is down. They're like, we need to do something fast, or we're looking to grow. So let's invest in something that'll help us grow. And I think that's where, particularly online, it's challenging as well. You're bombarded with advertisements. I'm bombarded with advertisements. It's like there's a lot of shiny objects out there that is basically pushing a message saying, this will help you get more money. This will help you get more revenue. And so from that perspective, it's challenging to figure out what is the best approach, because at the same time, a lot of these business owners are time poor. And
very time poor.
A lot of them don't craft out the space to actually sit down, do proper reviews, do proper planning sessions. I know that to be true because most of my clients that I work with, I'll ask them, okay, can you show me your sales strategy? Can you show me your sales plan? And none of them have it.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
A lot of the people that I work with, they are the salespeople. We have a client at the moment where it's in a traditional industry, it's a manufacturer of machinery, and, the founder, the engineer, and his one salesperson who's also customer service full time. And we're like, how do you track your leads? We've been working with them for years, implementing marketing, promotional campaigns, Facebook ads, videos, and fixing their website. And where do you track your leads? This was years ago. We had this conversation. Outlook, right?
Oof.
Email, right?
Oof.
And then what about that lead that fell off 6 weeks ago? They weren't tracking that, or we should follow up with this person again. They never emailed back. So on to the next lead. We worked with them as a marketing team. We're like, hey, we know what to do here because we've helped implement CRMs and support sales teams like that before. But you guys are the salespeople. Here's something called HubSpot, or here's something called Pipedrive. And it was a disaster because the sales team didn't really see the problem with the way they were doing things. And just asking the marketing team, keep doing your marketing, leave us salespeople alone. They almost took a front at it when we were saying, hey, I think we need to look at your sales process here.
Did they have a sales manager?
They have a salesperson who's also customer service, part-time. So I would like you to give us some of the top 2 or 3 sales strategy mistakes that you commonly see. And I don't want to just talk about mistakes. I want to talk about, why do these happen? What are the pain points that cause these things to happen? Yeah.
The fundamental problem I see over and over again is that they don't even have a sales strategy, right? Like a proper sales strategy, as I defined it earlier. One of the biggest mistakes they do is they have a tactic-driven approach to driving sales. And what do I mean by that? Tactic-driven approach is, we're going to get sales from LinkedIn.
Right.
And that's it. I know this to be a fact. Someone messaged me, he's in my network, a friend of mine, and he wanted tips about B2B lead generation. I told him a strategy, and he got back and he's like, oh, will LinkedIn work? It's like, okay, no, you need to take a step back. So What is a proper sales strategy in the way we execute it? We employ what's called an account-based approach, so ABM. So instead of like, okay, there's all these list of contacts, we're going to basically spam them with cold email. We take a step back and it's like, okay, who are essentially the top 100 companies that we would like to work with, that based off the work that we've done would actually be a good fit and potentially would be open to hearing our offer. Once we have that in place, then we can start working on which channels to start connecting with them. And how this works effectively, it's not a one channel over another, it's a multi-channel approach. You send an email, you follow up with a LinkedIn message, you pick up the phone, you message on email again, you meet them at an event. Because if you look at the data I've seen around, I guess, how many touches does it take to get someone maybe to remember your brand? It might take 7 to 11 touches.
Yeah.
Whereas the biggest mistake I see, to go back to your question about sales strategy, is they'll focus on one channel and they'll message someone once or twice, and then it doesn't work.
After COVID, there was a client of ours that had been really hit hard. They came to me and said, hey, we need leads. Should we do ads? Should we do Facebook? What should we do? I basically said, who are your customers currently? What is working now? Most of our customers come from trade show events, people we've met in the industry, or repeat customers. And you have their list of their emails, right? Yes. Awesome. Take 5 a day. You have nothing going on. And I don't want you to pay me to do this. I don't want you to pay me to do some Facebook ads or something like that. I want you to sit down for 5 minutes each day and email these friends. Send them a picture of the last ride you did with them 4 years ago before COVID started. Hey, I was just reminiscing. Want to see how you're doing. FYI, we're back up and running. Would love to have you out again. If you do that, you won't need me at all. It's completely free. It's just your time. They didn't like that answer. They didn't do it. Because a lot of times on the marketing side, people are time poor and they want to delegate it out instead of having an actual logical strategy for how to approach the best people that are most likely to buy your product in a reasonable way. They want to delegate it. And I understand that situation. At the same time, sometimes the best tactics in both sales and marketing are things that aren't easy to delegate. I mean, I could have had my wife and you could have had your wife delegate this podcast to each other, right? My wife interviewing your wife. And they would have made a very, very entertaining podcast, I'm sure. But if we'd give them this outline and stuff, it wouldn't have been the same. I'm not trying to get in trouble here.
Yeah, I get. It's interesting though. I think that reveals something quite fundamental about human psychology in terms of how people would prefer to solve problems. Would they prefer
pain avoidance?
Would they prefer to take the pill that's going to get rid of the headache in an hour or two, or would they commit to drinking more water during the day, taking more supplements, and maybe having a rest for 15 minutes? It gets worse, right? Let's say this is happening to the business owner and they're like, okay, we just need more leads. Even though they understand this is a solution to the problem they think they have, they're going to be tinkering with stuff in the back end. They'll keep changing their offer. They'll keep changing their pricing. They'll spend more time fixing their website. So it's not a case of just one problem and then we're going to look to get someone to help with that problem. Generally, they're actually making the problem worse by not being able to understand fundamentally what the core issue is.
It's funny because in many ways we're busy, but only in the last year we really started marketing our agency here in Chiang Mai, serving clients around the world and wanting to grow. So we actually have a pretty well-developed marketing strategy. I wouldn't say it's a sales strategy yet. It helps so much when my team or I go to my website or see how many podcasts we've published on YouTube. And I go, oh, it's maybe fewer than I want, or there's still things that need to be improved about our website. Having the strategy, having that framework allows me not to get carried away with that. Like otherwise I spend the whole weekend building out more pages and things like that. No, marketing strategy says, yes, that will be needed over time. And here's kind of a phased plan. It allows me to, what we call calm marketing, rest, rely on that strategy to go, no. It's okay that the website isn't perfect yet. It's okay that I'm not publishing maybe as many podcasts as I'd like to because we have these constraints that were all defined in the strategy, right? Similar to a sales strategy.
Yeah, so that's a good term, constraints.
You could go to every trade show there is, but if you don't have a sales strategy, if the only thing preventing you is your budget, as opposed to an actual strategic, no, we're not going to those events for this reason, because it's thought through, that's a lot more calming, I hope, to a founder, business owner, or the sales team to go, no, we're intentionally not doing that. We're intentionally not on TikTok for these reasons.
Yeah.
And that doesn't exist for a lot of companies.
Yeah. What comes to mind there is the owner who's doing all the selling themselves, right? And they feel the pressure like we need more sales, we need more leads. But the reality...
Are you talking to me right now? Because that's my position.
This was an elaborate strategy to basically to have this podcast so you would realize your own problems, Jake.
This is a discovery meeting for your consulting services. Yeah.
Yeah, that we also get to market as well. So we get some good content out of it. The constraint they have that they're probably not fully aware of is when they have that need, that pressure of like, need more sales, need more leads. Realistically, they don't have the time or energy to be able to do all of that. They have to make sure that the fulfillment is going right. They have to make sure that the finances are taking over. But yet they're still in that position. We need more leads, more sales. So that's why the businesses we work with, when we are working with a founder, Our goal is we're going to get your conversion rate up to 30 to 40%. And we're going to build a sales playbook so that you then can give this to a future employee to sell on your behalf. And that's why there's this lingo in the sales world of how to transition from founder-led sales.
Right.
And so
no founder wants to do that forever, right?
and I mean, yeah, we signed up another agency last week and the CEO is doing the sales calls and he's like, yeah, I want to get out.
So let's move on to, we talked about big issues that you see.
Yeah.
Were there any ones that we missed that you want to make sure that we get in?
No, I think that's adequate so far. I'm assuming based off some of the other questions that will come up, more of those stories will start to come out.
Right. Yeah, I want to transition to stories. Can you walk us through an example, recent or not recent, keeping the identities of these companies anonymous, where a client maybe thought they had a lead problem and what you genuinely found was the issue? And then how did they receive this news that there were other issues that needed to be addressed?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is very recent. This is like last week recent. Basically, we had the call with the company last Thursday and they became a client on the Friday. Like, we onboarded them on the Friday.
This room is pretty sound isolated, but it was just raining here a second ago.
We had a call with them last Thursday. They signed up on the Friday. They initially thought they had a lead problem. When we actually dug into it, it wasn't essentially a lead problem. It was a conversion problem. They were only converting maybe 5 to 10% of the leads they were getting.
Wow.
For me, I was very surprised because I was actually a customer of theirs before. Their front-facing brand looks pretty good. They have a good reputation, but that reputation is not converting into sales. And so when we kind of, look behind the curtain, it was a case of they didn't have a process. They didn't have a structure. Every sales call felt different. The feedback that we're actually getting.
What happened? How were they getting inquiries? Where were some of their principal channels? And then what would happen in the team? How many people were involved?
Yeah, so they were getting a lot of their leads from conferences. They'd either sponsor a conference.
Just a business card or a list?
So what the approach they had was kind of twofold. They'd either speak at a conference or they'd sponsor the conference. So if they're sponsoring the conference, they'd have a booth. Basically, they'd have some engagement, get the leads at the booth. If it's a case of they're speaking on stage, people would maybe come up to them after the talk, or they might have a lead magnet within the talk that would get leads for them.
Sure. Right? So kind of typical trade event leads.
Yeah, and referrals. They were kind of the two main channels that were driving leads.
Not too many organic leads through Google or other channels like that.
No, I mean, they previously, I think a year ago, they had some success with cold email, but that dried up.
Sure. And then the process, how many people were involved once a lead, the business card was there, we're back from the conference, then the salesperson or the founder starts hitting that list 3 weeks later when they actually can get to it, or?
Another challenge was there wasn't an adequate follow-up system. The business had two partners, and so one business partner would deal with some set of leads, another business partner would deal with, let's say, another chunk of leads. So it wasn't systematized. They were generating a lot of opportunities, but were leaving a lot of money on the table.
There's inefficiencies, but you can still have a very inefficient process. Send an email, and then that converts to business. What was the breakdown at that point? We're talking about some of these other inefficiencies. What's the breakdown at that point? Why were people turning them away? Because it was too unprofessional on the call?
Well, there was a few reasons, but I would go back to a fundamental principle that not all leads are created equal, which means you shouldn't treat all leads equal. What we had seen was they were treating, let's say, 7-figure companies, 8-figure companies, the same way they would treat a company that maybe has 10K in revenue. And so how this actually plays out in the sales process is they'll try to close one of these leads on one call. Generally, a company that is doing 7 to 8 figures in revenue, that's not how they work, because there's going to be multiple decision makers involved. There's a process in which that you need to find out the correct information about their pain points, then offer a solution relative to those pain points. And then, that doesn't mean you're going to get the sale either. There going to has to be a negotiation phase with that. You might have to deal with multiple stakeholders. And so that's how a traditional B2B sales cycle would look. However, if you're trying to do all of that on one call, it's not going to work.
You come across as pushy, right?
Yes.
Like, I've been on many of those calls as well, and it's like, I'll get back to you because I have all these other people I need to report to. I love your software, but I don't have the authority to just go and swipe the credit card or send the invoice over. I need to get everybody else on board with this, that this is what we're going to be using for the next 5 to 10 years to solve this issue. If I feel that mismatch with the salesperson, then I don't really want to go down that road with them because they don't get me where I'm at. That does not inspire confidence.
Yeah. When I explain this to the founders I'm speaking with, the analogy that wakes them up to it is, okay, think about the time you first met your wife or girlfriend. Did you do everything on the first date?
Right.
And generally the answer is no. There's a courting process.
Mm-hmm.
There's a process to get to know the person. And it's no different in business.
But other people have the opposite issue, right? Where they're trying to close them on one call and others might not actually be identifying this. What's the other side of the pendulum?
Well, then the other side is if you're too passive, they're experts in their domain, which is YouTube. If someone says, I want to grow on YouTube, can you help me? They'll talk like 30 minutes, 60 minutes just on that. And then the end of the call, the person on the receiving end is like, whoa, that was amazing. Thanks.
Yeah.
And it's done. There's no transaction.
How do we then translate that to benefit and why we want to work with you? The offer.
Yeah. This is why you need a structured sales process. And you need to manage that process, right? Typically, if you're selling products that are or services that are over 1,000 a month, first call, you want a discovery. You want to figure out, is this even a fit? And if it's not, cool, but let's not waste any more time. If they are a fit, let's schedule another call where we're going to take the information that they gave us so that we can actually show them how our solution will solve their specific problems. If there's a fit there as well, it's like, okay, let's talk about the commercials.
I deal with smaller clients who want some video editing, or there's no risk to try us out. I say, look, there's no contract. I'm not even going to give you a quote. I just guarantee what's your price that you want to spend or the minimum you want to spend on this video. The thing is, that can be a long conversation, and it shouldn't be, right? It can devolve into all these details, and I'm like, just, hey, look, me and my team will edit that video for you. And then I'll tell you how much we would charge. That way you get a video, you pay me for covering my time to put that video together, and then we know how it is to work together, because we're talking about a few $100s a transaction as opposed to a few thousands. Trust me, I'm happy to work on it for you. If you're not happy with it, then you haven't lost anything. I've noticed that there can be this back and forth of contracts and how much to charge. I'm like, dude, just give me the video. If you're not happy with it and you're not happy with the price, then forget it.
Yeah.
When you're brought in to a company to help with their sales, what are typically your relationships and interactions with the marketing team, whoever's doing the marketing? What do you observe from there?
A lot of the time it's siloed, Jay, because they're like, okay, yeah, we're generating some leads, we're running Google ads, we're running Facebook ads. No, we just want to start closing more of them. So again, it's like, we're dealing with the surface level challenges. We're not really getting to the fundamental of like, okay, what's the goal of the company? What's the strategy we're going to take to hit the goal? And what's the fundamental plan to do it? A lot of the time, it depends on the size of the company. The way I've explained that, that's typically, let's say, a 7-figure company, right? Who are like, okay, we have something put together, but we want to start optimizing. Generally, the 7-figure companies, it's like, it's optimization. They've got everything to a decent standard, just they want it a bit better.
Yeah.
To directly answer your question, I would say a new function has started to peer its head to try to solve this. And it's called, I don't know if you've seen this, but it's called RevOps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Companies are starting to hire people to make sure this works, right? Head of revenue operations to make sure that marketing and sales are kind of working together. A lot of the time, though, that's with companies who have budget. Where I've seen that trend is usually you look to the US, you look to Silicon Valley, fast-growing B2B SaaS startups. They'll be able to get one in, pay 250K a year or 500K a year, whatever it is, and they'll take care of that. The reality is a lot of businesses, they don't have the budget for that.
Right.
So they won't be able to hire that person full-time, or they can hire. I had a client I worked with this year who basically hired someone to create that function within the business, but not in a full-time capacity. They built the RevOps structure, and then they had the CEO execute that structure.
Have you seen some really good examples that you were thrilled with of working with a company on their sales strategy, and then you're able to see marketing support that strategy in really powerful ways? Can you give us a couple specific examples?
Yeah, I would say the best example I've seen was when I worked with Time Doctor. At that stage, they had gotten to $21 million annual recurring revenue. Still bootstrapped, didn't take outside funding, but their marketing and sales really worked together. Essentially, marketing was driving the leads, right? They were driving a 14-day free trial to try the software. When new signups came in, sales would then call them, because they knew over time there were certain things that had to happen to make people sticky to the software. And generally what they were finding is there was two big things. One is if they could get like 3 to 4 employees of one company on the trial. The other one was, could they get the person who signed up in the trial onto a demo? That's how they were able to grow so fast. Honestly, I still haven't seen marketing and sales being coordinated as effective as I saw with that business.
That's awesome.
And they had
Mm-hmm.
really effective people. So it's like the 3 Ps of business that Michael Gerber talks about: it. People, product, process, right? Really good product, really good process, and then they had really good people.
And what's interesting about what you just described is that the marketing department really understood their role, not just branding and reputation and colors, but we need to tee up, to use a baseball term. Or is that a golf term?
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
you're the American. I'll let you comment on that. I've no knowledge of baseball.
maybe that's a golf term. Sorry,
Yeah.
my ignorance is showing. But the marketing team understood that if we can promote this, make some videos and ads and bring in some influencers or people with YouTube channels to sponsor videos that show demos, and then drive these 14-day free trials for people who have issues with these pain points, that sets up the sales team. Okay, volleyball for a spike, right? With a volley, they come in then say, hey, well, you're using it. Do you have anyone else who's having this problem in the team? Oh yeah, Joe down the. Oh, can we get Joe on the free trial as well? And you guys can compare notes, and because then they knew that those were the things best combined. So it's a really good example of marketing understanding that the tactic is part of a larger strategy. And in the sequence, a lot of times marketers can get really distracted with all the, hey, the founder wants a presentation fixed. I mean, technically, yeah, that's marketing, right? The founder looks good in front of the bank. He's trying to negotiate a better rate or something like that. But there's all of that distracts marketers, and I think salespeople as well. There's all these little things that can distract a salesperson. A salesperson loves to see new leads come in, but I've had issues training and coaching salespeople who just don't want to go back and call people who have fallen off their list. Same with marketers, right? There's a lot of shiny objects to distract us.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that as well, of this being a great example of how to get marketing to work. The thing there, right? Sales, a lot of companies I'm working with love inbound leads. They're like, yes, we want inbound leads because the perception is they're easier to close. But again, it's not just an inbound lead comes in and that's going to turn into a sale. You have to work the lead.
Yes.
For that company, Time Doctor, it worked so well. They figured out how to get the leads, but they were also actively working them.
So the 14-day free trial was already filtering out people who weren't ideal fits for them. So the actual marketing tactic was a filter and setting up sales with the best possible leads, very hot, very ready.
Yeah, and then from the sales perspective, you can go another step further before even reaching out to these leads. You can do some research or set up some lead scoring, lead criteria that'll basically be able to tell you, is it actually worth reaching out to this person at all? And then if you see that the email that's signed up, maybe it's like john@nike.com, you're like, well, damn, Nike is a big company and someone in the company is looking at our software, so yes, I'm going to go after that.
But like you said before, the bigger companies take longer to close. I have 2 companies that are like my big fish that I've been trying to work on, but they only do their marketing in 2 years contracts, right? They'll have a marketing company on tap for 2 years. So I'm having to wait another year for both of them because they still have a contract.
But I
need to nurture them.
Yeah.
And if I nurture them and I stay on it,
I'd be curious as well, like with those, well, this is me with my sales hat on. Sometimes if someone says they're on a contract, the other person is like, okay, they're on a contract, the conversation is done. Interesting. Is there any clauses in the contract for termination? Like what happens if this vendor actually isn't delivering? Oh, well, actually, yeah, we do have so now you're opening up their mind to the possibility where they could leave instead of just sitting on the information over on contract.
Yeah. That and just staying involved in helping them with advice and things like that gives you more time to become indispensable. What a lot of founders and company owners are dynamite people, right? They're just big personalities. Do you think that sometimes it's hard for them to turn what has built the company so far into a sales process? How do they balance their founder hustle and creativity with a more uniform sales process and pipeline?
If I'm to understand your question correctly, are you essentially asking me, as a founder, they can do a lot of different things, but what's the stage for them to really think, okay, maybe we need to formalize things a bit better, maybe we need to have a bit more structure?
Because during the first few months or years, even, a lot of it ends up being just on the founder who's doing the fulfillment and onboarding and everything. You can imagine that for a lot of them, it's quite hectic and they jump on a call, they land the client and they rush to fulfillment. At what point is that stage necessary? And what would you say to a founder who's feeling maybe cut out of the process?
Yeah, in the early stages of the company, it's important because really at the end of the day, the best salesperson in the business should be the founder. The reason being is they're going to be more intimately attached to the problem they're solving than anyone else. Generally, when, let's say, founders get to the stage of, okay, maybe there is another way to go about sales, is generally when revenue is plateauing or it's stagnant. The balance sheet doesn't lie. If you're doing the same level of revenue for the past 2 or 3 years, why is that? And a lot of the time it's because the founder is still doing everything. So the founder will typically realize by looking at the financials that revenue isn't growing, revenue is either stagnant or declining. They realize they can't keep doing everything anymore. And so the question becomes, if our revenue isn't growing and I want the revenue to grow, what needs to change? This is when they get to the stage of, maybe instead of being in the business, I need to start working on the business. So it's not typically just, okay, what do we need to do with sales? It's a fundamental question of, how does my role need to change for me to bring the company to where I want to bring it to? And maybe one part of that is eventually getting myself out of sales so that I can have other people to sell for me. I get my time back and I have more energy to work on. I'm not going to say more leverage, because sales is one of the most leveraged things you can do in your business, but definitely from like a strategic level of like, how can I have more time to work on the higher level things that are really going to move the business forward?
Right. We're about an hour into our interview. Alan, can you share for business owners or sales teams that are listening, if these are hitting pain points, don't you have some resources they can look into to start working on this themselves? And also, how could you help them as well?
A lot of what we've been talking about regarding challenges businesses are having is that they're making actions based off false assumptions around what their actual problems are. So if you go to our website, we basically give a free sales audit. If they go to aptsalesconsulting.com, you can get a free sales audit. We have a questionnaire, list of questions that you go through. And then once you go through that, we'll actually give you a report to outline where the problems are in your sales process. I would say that's probably step one if you want to shed more light on what's going on in your business from a sales perspective. And then two, from the results from that, if you want more clarity, then just book a call, because then I can give you direct feedback on what's actually going on and why it's happening the way it's happening.
I'm just out of curiosity, can you tell me why one of your prospects, your inquiries, did not go with your services recently? Can you give us some reasons? Maybe humorous, maybe not, but why did someone go, you know what, I'm not proceeding with your consulting services?
There are far more reasons why someone would not do business with you versus why they would. This could be a small thing. Let's say, for instance, you've managed the sales process really well, given them a great presentation, and informed them what the fee will be. Part of their brain might think, oh, I can do this myself. That's one I've gotten recently. And what I'd say to that is 100%. You can do it yourself. Realistically, what tends to happen is the business will reach back out to us in 6 months, because not only has the problem not been solved, it's been made a lot worse. And I had that call last week with a company where I spoke with them maybe 6 months ago, and it was very clear what the problem was and what the solution was to the problem. We couldn't agree on the financials, so we both walked away. The 6 months that went by, they worked on the problem, and they've destroyed their business model. They'll see a lead problem, maybe a sales problem, and then it's like things aren't changing, revenue isn't growing. Maybe it's the business model, and they start tinkering with a lot of different things. Now, this is the recent chat I had with them a week ago. It's like, I wouldn't touch this company anymore. Like, it's gone so far gone. It's like, I can't help.
Yeah.
So the big thing, and this is kind of a term used a lot in sales, it's the cost of inaction, right? So sometimes I'll explain it to them. It's like, okay, if we decide not to work together and you go your own way, typically this will happen. And then sometimes they'll say, okay, we'll try it our own way anyway. And then unfortunately, reality will present itself.
Yeah, because you're a dispassionate person who wants to see them grow. They're not dispassionate. They're emotional. They have too much baggage, right? I have too much baggage with my own company. Most people who lead companies do. We want to think that we are the visionary and strategist for our companies. We need outside mentors, outside consultants who don't have any emotional attachment. What I see a lot of is this worked before, or we've always done it this way, or we decided 5 years ago not to do this one thing. And it's still stuck in their head that that is still the status quo.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come in and just say, hey, I mean, this seems pretty straightforward. Here's what you should be doing and not wasting time on. They needed that fresh perspective. Thank you very much, Alan, for bringing all this insight. I really appreciate you also helping me over some lunches. There's things that you've recommended to us that we've implemented into our own sales process. Objection handling, making sure that we don't send over proposals, but go through them with the client on a call every time. With the time zones, it's like, oh, I just want to, here you go. You asked for a proposal, here it is. Just reply, confirm.
Yeah.
No, get on the call, handle the objections face to face. That's helped us a lot as well to get more of our ideal clients. So.
Great to chat as always.